David R. here. Today I'm going to talk to you about this book, Life in Prison, by Stanley Tookie Williams with Barbara COTTMAN Becknell. Little background on Stanley. At the age of 6, Stanley began roaming the streets. By the age of 11, he and some friends met a guy named Rock, and Rock told them that prison was where a man proved his toughness. Rock showed them pictures of himself and other prisoners who were big muscular guys, and at that point Stanley said, hey, I want to be like those guys. I want to be big and muscular and have my picture taken from prison. Well, guess what? Be careful what you wish for, because there he is, big muscular guy. This guy's huge, and he had his picture taken from prison. In 1971, Stanley and a friend named Raymond Washington formed the street gang, the Crips, and the rest is history, right? So Stanley wrote this book while on death row in San Quentin. He had killed 4 people during the course of 2 robberies. So, he deserved to be on death row. Anyway, he decided to change his ways while he was in prison. He started writing books like these. This book is obviously written for a teenage audience, teenage boys, most likely. Trying to steer them away from the life he had led. Now, I think that's kind of interesting, especially for a guy who formed a street gang like the Crips to completely change his ways. That's it's fascinating, in my opinion. So, Stanley wrote about his life in prison, and I'll just take you through that. There's only 10 chapters, it's a short book. Chapter 1, Cages. And he talks about prison being like a cage. He said when he was 15 years old, he saw some dog that was in a cage, and he was like, I don't ever want to be like that dog. But he wound up being like that dog, locked in a cell. He also says that if you want to get a feel for what it's like to be in prison, then live in your bathroom for 10 hours with just a sandwich, a pillow, maybe a blanket. Don't leave that bathroom at all. Stay there for 10 hours straight and see what it's like. He says that prison is noisy and smelly. It's noisy because, prisoners are trying to talk over one another. There's hundreds of prisoners there, and they're all talking at the same time. There's obviously the doors slamming, the keys rattling, maybe prisoners yelling. It's also smelly because some prisoners just don't bathe. And some that do, they do what's called bird baths, where they just use water from their sink to clean themselves. It's terrible. Chapter 2, A Day in Prison. Stanley says that, he would get up at 6 a.m., eat. He had to eat in his cell because death row inmates could not eat with other prisoners. So he would eat something, and then by 7 a.m. he would be out on the yard exercising. Not a whole lot prisoners can do. He would occupy his time by studying and things, but not all prisoners would do such a thing. Chapter 3, Stir Crazy. He says it's easy to become claustrophobic and maybe even cross over into stir crazy. There's a class of prisoners known as J Crew or Category J. They are crazy. They don't bathe, they don't brush their teeth, they don't comb their hair, they pee themselves. They're insane. Now, in order for them to be cleaned, they need to be extracted from their cell and hosed down while guards hose down their cell. So you see, it's pretty dirty. Chapter 4, Strip Search. Man, strip searches galore. He says that every time he leaves his cell, he's strip searched. If he's going to meet with his lawyer or something, he's strip searched before, strip searched after. He says it's dehumanizing, not only for him, but for the guards. Now, I think that's interesting because he mentions the guards. It shows that he has some kind of empathy. Now, I don't know, maybe he didn't write that part. Maybe the other writer, Barbara, wrote that part. But I think Stanley did. Because I think the whole reason he even wrote these books right here was to get people to change, to not be like him. He had an empathy. Chapter 5, like rules. He mentions several rules, like showers no longer than 15 minutes, hair can't be longer than 3 inches long, nails can only be a certain length. But you know, even though he complains about the rules, he is in prison. He killed 4 people. You know what I mean? It is prison. It's supposed to be a place of punishment. All right, so chapter 6, the hole. Some books call this a special housing unit, like SHU. He says prisoners go there for getting into an argument with a guard, stealing, fighting, stabbing somebody. I mean, there's a variety of reasons. Stanley was in the hole for 7 years. Kind of tells you what kind of prisoner he was, right? Chapter 7, home cooking. He misses, regular meals. The meals in prison, if you call them meals, they're small, very small portions. As you can see, this guy's huge, and he only gets like a small amount of food. There's also the fact that what looks like food doesn't taste like food. It's really, really terrible. And he mentioned some food item in here. It was just really bad. Chapter 8, healthcare. Wow, healthcare is nearly non-existent. I read it in another book called Inside by Michael Santos, where healthcare is just like an ibuprofen. But he mentions in this book that, doctor is there 2 times a week. The prisoners are on a list, and if the list is full, you don't get to see the doctor. It doesn't matter what your condition is. You got to wait till the next time around. He said that the healthcare in prison isn't so good anyway. Let's say if you've been stabbed or something, you may not get to go to an outside hospital. You just take that chance. Chapter 9, violence in prison. Violence is like an active volcano. It can erupt at any time, even onto the guards. Some prisoners are so afraid of being preyed upon with violence that they submit to being sexual slaves to some of the rougher, harder, older prisoners. It's a tough life there. Chapter 10, I believe chapter 10 sums up the bleakness of this book. Chapter 10 is called Homesickness. Now, he talks about homesickness like it's a very, very bad thing. He won't look out the prison's dirty cell window because he would see the ships sail by, and that would remind him of home. And he asks himself some questions. What if I had not been expelled from high school? What if I had not co-founded the Crips? What if I had not wound up on death row? He's like, would I have bought a boat and learned to sail? Maybe he would have. But he never got that chance because on December 13th, 2005, Stanley was executed by lethal injection in San Quentin State Prison. So anyway, that's all I got. Talk to you later. Bye.